What if goal setting wasn't the solution to leading a happy and fulfilled life? And what is an alternative that can support you to design the sort of life you want? Every so often, I come across a book that literally is a huge epiphany and I feel just so excited about. This is definitely the case with Tiny Experiments by Dr. Anne-Laure Lecomte. Fantastic book, How to Live Freely in a Goal-Obsessed World. How to Live Freely in a Goal-Obsessed World. And it has been recommended by Cal Newport, Oliver Burkeman, so many people, and it is an amazing book, so I highly recommend it. And the concept that I'll be exploring today is based on one of the concepts from the book. There's a lot of gold in there, and I'm only going to cover one small thing, which is how you can shift from this goal setting towards creating a tiny experiment in your life and why it's worthwhile doing so. As a coach, I've always thought the goals were fantastic. I set so many different goals in my personal life and in my business, and it has helped me to have a compass and a direction. But, and this is what Dr. Anne-Laure Lecomte explains in the book, and I've definitely lived this, there are some downfalls, there are some negative sides to having goals all the time, this linear way of thinking. First of all, this can lead to a lot of fear and anxiety. Sometimes the goals are so big and so ambitious, you can have so much fear that you won't actually achieve it. And this is definitely something that I've experienced. And sometimes goals actually hold you back because they're so scary or ambitious, so you don't know how to do it. It can feel quite hard or heavy. And this is another core point, which is the fact that it can lead to a lot of self-doubt. Because when you don't achieve your goals multiple times in a row, you start to doubt it. For instance, if you've set a New Year resolution 5 years in a row, each time saying that you'd lose weight, or you'd start going to the gym, or you'd start growing the business in a different way, and each time you failed, you start to lose faith that you can actually do it because you've set the goal and you haven't seen the results. There are many things when it comes to goal setting that I hadn't really taken into account. And when reading the book, I realized there was a lot of truth to it, which is this fact that it's so linear in our way of thinking. And it's sort of a yes or no. Either you've achieved the goal or you haven't achieved it. And if you don't, you feel you haven't made any progress. Now, you might have made progress in that direction, but just not fully achieved the goal. And this could lead to self-doubt. It can lead to you feeling unfulfilled and dissatisfied. And this is where, in the book, they offer a new perspective, an alternative to our current way of thinking, which for me was just absolutely illuminating, fascinating, wonderful concept. And this is what we're going to be exploring today. First, we need to look at there are 4 different ways in which we can deal with uncertainty. Because that's what goal setting is all about, really. We're not certain what the future will be. We're not certain of our direction or what will happen. So we think we just set a goal and it sort of gives us that direction. And it's a way of compensating for uncertainty. There are multiple ways in which we compensate for uncertainty and where we want to gain control. And this is called compensatory control. And this comes from, for instance, one case, you might be cynical. And you become negative and you start to doubt everything and you don't believe in yourself or the projects anymore. You start to look at everything from a sort of negative lens. But you could also be more of an escapist. So when you're in a situation where everything feels uncertain, you escape, either through your own imagination and imagining other alternatives, or through watching certain things or reading certain books or imagining a fictitious alternative reality as a form of escapism. But you might also be the perfectionist type. And when you're perfectionist, then you just try and make everything fit and everything so perfect and control every little thing. And these are all obsessions that we have in order to control uncertainty. If we plot this on 2 axes, so curiosity and ambition, when your ambition is low and your curiosity is low, that's cynicism. Now, when in contrast, your curiosity is high, but your ambition is low, that's escapism. And when your ambition is high, but your curiosity is low, that's perfectionism. And what this book shows is that the 4th category, where both your curiosity is high and your ambition is high, is the experimental mindset. And this is a mindset that you want to have when you are dealt the cards of life that feel uncertain. When you're coping with uncertainty, you want to embrace an experimental mindset. And in this case, you shift from linear thinking, goal setting, towards experimental mindset and tiny experiments. The core difference between setting goals and setting a tiny experiment is that a tiny experiment is focused mainly on the outputs and not the outcome. So output is what you can do, the actions you can take. Outcome is what we want in exchange. So goals that are focused on outcomes are things like, I will earn X amount of money before the end of the year. That's outcome driven. That's a goal. Or I will lose X amount of weight. That's outcome driven. Or I will gain X amount more subscribers. That's outcome driven. Those are things that you can't fully control. Then you do a bunch of actions to help you to get there. Now, on the other hand, if you shift towards output driven, that could be, I show up and go to the gym every day. That's something you can do. Or it can be, I create videos or podcasts every week. That's output driven. And so the idea of tiny experiments is the pact that you have with yourself, where you say, I will do this activity for X amount of time. You run it as an experiment. I will publish one blog article a week for a year. I will create one video every day for a month. I will go to the gym 3 times a week for a year. Whatever it is. When you do this, what I think is really interesting is it's sort of a combination, but not quite either goal or habit. It's not quite a goal because it's not outcome driven, but output driven. And it's not quite a habit because it's for a fixed amount of time. A habit would be like forever onwards, you want to meditate every day. But you don't know until you've tried it for a month or two if you want to do that every day. So doesn't it make more sense to then say, I will do this for a month, for 3 months, and then afterwards look at the results and ask yourself, okay, is this something you want to continue? And then maybe you can turn it into a habit if you so wish to. But I like this idea of it being sort of a time frame experiment, because then you get to notice and observe afterwards the results and learn from them. Now, how do you come up with your tiny experiment? How do you know which tiny experiment to define? So Dr. Anne-Laure Lecomte suggests running an anthropological study on yourself. What this means is learning and studying yourself every day. See your triggers, see what bothers you, annoys you, makes you happy, makes you grumpy, what feels aligned, what feels out of alignment, what makes you excited. And start to take a lot of notes and observations on how you run your life, what your thoughts are like, what emotions come up for you. And as you run all of these observations, maybe a few stand out, maybe they keep repeating themselves. And then based on that, you then ask a question, form a hypothesis, and do a tiny experiment. This is what it looks like in practice. So let's say one observation is you're feeling really stressed every single day, all the time. So you notice this comes up, you're feeling very stressed. That's an observation. You turn it into a question. How can I feel calmer? How can I feel more balanced every day? And then you make a hypothesis. Maybe if I meditate every morning, maybe if I take more breaks, maybe if I do yoga, maybe if I change the type of work I'm doing, then I will feel calmer. That's a hypothesis. And that's what you base your tiny experiment on. So I will meditate every morning for 15 minutes for the next 2 months. And then you can see how does that affect your stress level. Let's take another experiment idea. Let's say, for instance, that you're feeling creatively stuck. So you notice, I feel creatively stuck. I don't have any ideas when it comes to writing blog articles or my next book or creating content for YouTube or whatever it is. Feel creatively stuck. Observation. Question. How can I feel more creatively inspired, light, energized, innovative in my creativity? Hypothesis. Maybe I could try writing morning pages, which is an exercise recommended by Julia Cameron in her book, The Artist's Way, where you write 3 pages every morning in full flow without stopping. It's meant to ignite your creativity. So maybe I could try morning pages every day. Tiny experiment. Let me write my morning pages every single day for 3 months. And then you notice, does this affect how creatively stuck or inspired you are? Now you see, this is pure genius. When I read it, this workflow was so fantastic because it's so clear. You observe something in your life, but instead of just jumping into action mode and thinking, okay, what do I do about this? It's more subtle. You ask a question, then you form a hypothesis, and then you try it out as an experiment. Because often what I've definitely done is it's gone from I feel stressed to, okay, now I need to meditate every day. There's sort of a gap where if you don't ask that question, could I feel calm, and you formulate it as a hypothesis, by asking the question, maybe it opens up other thoughts. So you shift your way of thinking, you turn it into a question, you form a hypothesis, and you might have several, because then also after you do your 3 months of meditation, you might be like, that's great, but maybe you notice you're still stressed, so what's the other thing you're going to do? And you sort of continue these cycles. Maybe you maintain that, or maybe you change it. I feel often this is just a different way of thinking. I feel that often we don't do the whole cycle. We sort of notice a problem, if we notice it and observe it, and we leap into solution mode and action mode, but we don't quite turn it into an experiment. This is just a smarter way of thinking. When I read the book, it totally made sense to me that this was just a way more practical, smart way of thinking. And instead of being so goal-oriented, which is the outcome, or instead of turning it into a habit where you do it for life, you're just sort of thinking, hey, how about I do this for a month or 2 or 3? And let me see what I learned from that. And it also helps you not to go into that failure mode, because I think sometimes when you set a goal and you don't reach it, you end up feeling like you failed, or it failed, and feel disappointment. But if you set it as an experiment, experiments by the name, by the nature of it, sometimes they succeed, sometimes they fail. That's what an experiment is. So then you can just be like, okay, I did the morning pages for 6 weeks. It didn't work. Let me try this. But you have that extra accountability to yourself of that time frame, because that's something else I've realized is that sometimes we decide, let me just try to exercise every day or meditate or whatever it is, but we try for a week or 2. But if you decide ahead of time, okay, the time frame I need to do this for is 3 months, and I'll be able to know within 3 months if this feels right or not, or if this has helped me towards the initial observation I had, then you're giving it a real shot and a real try. So it's that nice sort of middle ground between the high, overly ambitious, goal-driven moonshot for the next 5 years and that sort of habit building that you're going to do forever and ever. It's a sort of a nice middle ground where it's doable, it's within your own reach, it's within your own capacity, and yet it can still be a bit of a challenge, and then you can learn from it. I think this is amazing. So I was very excited about this concept and sharing this concept. So shifting from linear thinking and goal setting, where everything can be a bit rigid, though I still see value in goal setting, but having this a bit more as a tiny experiment, I think, is more within our control. It's lighter, it's both high curiosity and high ambition in that experimental mindset, also less failure, less self-doubt, less cynicism, and kind of fun. Because what we're doing here is exploration over paralysis. So instead of being sort of analysis paralysis, what could you be doing? You explore, you try different things. It's fun, it's curious, it's open-minded, it broadens your way of thinking. Very exciting concept. So absolutely love it. Highly recommend the book. This is just a nugget from the beginning. It goes into a lot of other core concepts and fantastic stuff around time and procrastination. And no, she isn't sponsoring this episode. I'm just very passionate about these ideas and just in general about a lot of books. So that's why I often recommend some core books here on the podcast. If you've experimented this, if you have tried these tiny experiments, please share in the comments below. I'd love to hear your own feedback, how this has impacted your life, your work, your business, what sort of results have you seen, and how do you think it differs from goal setting? It's such an easy framework, really, like you observe in your life, run anthropological experiments on your life, your observation, you ask some core deep questions, run some hypothesis, and then turn it into a tiny experiment. And then you can just loop this over and over again, and it can have amazing results. So very curious to hear how you've explored this. If you're new to the show, my name is Katie Stoddard. I work as a conscious leadership and high performance coach, speaker, and podcaster. Very excited to discuss this topic. I hope you've also enjoyed today's episode. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe, like, leave a comment. Thank you so much for tuning in, and see you in the next episode.